Welcome to Intentionally Rooted, 10 minutes to help you live more deeply rooted in the love of God. I'm Susan Carson, and it's my passion to create safe spaces for transformational encounters through listening and healing prayer. In this podcast, we offer spiritual practices to help you live more deeply connected with the love of God, yourself, and others. Today, our practice is the Ignatian practice of imaginative prayer. So I am going to first read a parable, one of the stories that Jesus told. This parable is most commonly known as the parable of the prodigal son, but I like to talk about it as the parable of the two sons. And honestly, I think it might be more accurately called the parable of the father, because in this parable we see the character and the heart of the father for his two sons. So first I'm going to read through this story from Luke chapter 15. And then I'm going to walk us back through it bit by bit. And as I do that, I encourage you to engage your imaginations. Enter into this story. Find yourself in it. Are you the younger son? Are you the older son? Are you the father? Are you someone who works for the father watching this story unfold? Engage all of your senses. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? So as we begin, I'm going to pray for you, and then we're going to jump in to the scripture here in Luke 15. So I bless you to just relax and rest in the presence of Jesus. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Maybe do that a few more times if you're feeling distraction or in your mind or tension in your body. Just breathe and release. So I bless you. I bless your mind to engage. I bless your imagination to engage. I bless your heart to engage with the words of Jesus to you today through this story. There was a man who had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the property that is coming to me." And he divided his property between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his field to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate. And no one gave him anything. But when he had come to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field. And as he came and drew near to the house, he heard the music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound." But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, "Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him." And the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So let's step back through the story. So engage your imagination and watch as this unfolds. This younger son comes to his father and demands his share of the inheritance. What must that young son have been feeling or thinking? And what must the father have thought and felt as his son made this request? The father grants the request, and the son takes off. He goes far away. He spends everything he has in wild and reckless living. And then everything is spent, and a famine comes. What do you see as you think of that son and his experience? What emotions come? What must that son have been feeling? What would that hunger have felt like to him? And that sense of desperation, everything he had is now gone. And now he finds himself in a field working with pigs. Consider the smells, the sounds, all of his experience. And he longs just to eat the food the pigs eat, and yet there's nothing for him. And then consider that moment where he begins to come to his senses and realize that in his father's house, in his father's home, the servants have more than enough bread to eat. And his heart turns, and he makes that decision to go back and to tell his father that he has sinned against him, and to proclaim that he is no longer worthy. Consider that place in that son's heart. So he picks up and he heads home. And Jesus tells us that while that son was still a long way off, that father, he begins to run. He begins to run towards his son. So what would that look like? What expression would that son see on his father's face? As that father feels compassion and the joy of his son's return. And the son makes his protestation that he's no longer worthy, and the father instead calls the servants to restore to that son all the marks of his sonship, the robe and the ring and the shoes. He fully restores that son to his place in the family. And that father throws a lavish party. So what would that party look like? What would the smells be? What would the sound be? There's music. There's celebrating. And then that older son comes home, and he is just angry. He's offended that the father would throw this party for this son, because he, the older son, has been faithful. He's been obedient, and he's never asked for a party. He's never gotten a party. Consider the offense of that older son's heart, his attitude towards his father and towards his brother. And in that place, the father speaks these words: "Son, you have always been with me, and everything I have is yours." What emotions rise in you as you hear those words? Those words are true for both the sons. Both those sons have always been with the father. Everything that father has always belonged to those sons, and yet neither one of them knew it. Neither one of them really knew this father who throws parties in celebration of their life. So I bless you to receive those words over your life today. Daughter, son, God is always with you, and everything he has is yours. I hope you experienced God's presence with you today through this practice of imaginative prayer. Spiritual practices like this one have been used by God's people throughout history to connect with God through prayer. Thanks for sharing this time with me today. If it's been meaningful to you, please help us grow this community by rating, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. We'll be back in a month with another podcast. In the meantime, you can connect with me and find more resources at susancarson.net. And you can find my book there, releasing September 26th, Rooted in Thriving in Connection with God, Yourself, and Others. I'd love for you to join me on Facebook and Instagram. And I bless you today to live more deeply rooted in love.